I want to talk about Zebec as of right now, even though nothing I say is financial advice. However, this is an update on my thoughts regarding the project. But here's the thing. Sometimes you have to tell me, why is it that when I talked about ZBCN, suddenly there was like this random pullback or something like that when it comes to ZBCN? Well, first of all, I cannot control ZBCN in any way. There's over 80,000 holders. One holder out of over 80,000, like personally, in my case, I can't do anything about ZBCN, but at the same time, Zebec was a project that already existed before I even knew what it was. Actually, when I first made a video on ZBCN, like the market cap was what? Like below 100 million? But then, of course, at one point, it went to a market cap of over 500 million, and now it's around 300 million. However, even besides that as well, sometimes there's kind of this feeling, right? Like, for instance, my friend out there, every time he watches like a certain TV show, he would feel a certain way, and then he said that if he does that, then his day wouldn't be as good or something. Sometimes there's that kind of feeling for whatever reason. It's like, for instance, I have a friend out there who, let's say, if he leaves the home, right, he wants his chair to face like a certain direction, or not, he thinks like it's just like not a good vibe overall to start the day. Now, does that really mean much in the grand scheme of things? Like, personally for me, it is not something I would even like consider. Like, also, I even talked about this in one of my previous videos, how I have a friend out there who does not want to buy items in like threes. Like, what do I mean by this? So let's say he buys like a pair of jeans. He doesn't want three. He wants like at least like two or four. He wants it like an even number, basically. Because he told me that every time he bought like something in threes, he would have these moments where something like got lost or something like that, or something would happen to it. Does it really mean much? Like, personally, I don't have those type of like feelings. But then who knows? This is just the way you take a look at it. So then sometimes you have to tell me, oh, when you talked about ZBCN, this happened, or whatever happened. Well, again, I can't control ZBCN in any way. But yeah, that's just the way I take a look at it. It's like, for instance, sometimes I have a friend out there, he listens to a certain type of song, and then suddenly he's like, oh, he doesn't want to listen to that song because every time he listens to it, something like he feels like happens or something like that. But then again, it's just sometimes a little bit of a mindset which I don't have, right? When it comes to, it's like, for instance, my chair isn't facing a certain direction, I don't feel that good. No, again, I don't have that type of feeling. But even besides that point, when it comes to ZBCN, sure, there's a slight pullback as of right now, but the thing is, altcoins are just not generally doing the best. This is my point of view. I don't think I've seen an altcoin season during this cycle, and actually, when I take a look at ZBCN, sure, it's had a pullback, but it hasn't had such a drastic pullback like in the case of XCN, right? XCN was actually way more popular than ZBCN at one point. Actually, if we take a look at just during this cycle, what was the peak of XCN, right? The market cap was around 1 billion, and then we saw something like ZBCN was around 500 million, around that range. So actually, XCN during the cycle, right, has actually done more than something like ZBCN. However, the thing is, XCN's pullback has been a lot more than something like ZBCN. So actually, ZBCN, despite never achieving that sort of popularity level of XCN, or should I say Onyx, it's actually holding up a lot better. Now, that kind of showcases that in the grand scheme of things, yes, a lot of altcoins has had a pullback, but at the same time, XCN to me has had more of an extensive one than something like ZBCN. So yeah, sure, again, ZBCN's had a pullback, but is it really as bad as some other projects out there? That's just my perspective. However, at the same time as well, when I take a look at something like Zebec, I get it. People like to say, oh, they're doing all these partnerships when it comes to the cards and all this type of stuff, but why hasn't really done that much? Well, just because there's no altcoin season so far during the cycle. So good partnerships could make like some short-term kind of movements in some cases, but it might kind of be a little bit short-lived if, let's say, there is no altcoin season. This is just my perception, right? And the thing is, actually, ZBCN had a pretty good rally not too long ago. Like, if we take a look at it, for instance, back in May, what altcoin season was there back then? You know what I mean? Now, ZBCN's actually, I think, having more fundamentally for me to kind of look into as opposed to back then. Also, on top of that, I get it. 10 cents. I mean, we're still around 30 times lower than that. So it's pretty far away. But at the same time, the way you take a look at it is seeing that right there is not something I would necessarily complain about. Like, for instance, me dollar cost averaging back in March, for instance, when it comes to ZBCN, when the market cap was like below 80 million, slightly, right? and it was just kind of hovering around that range for quite a while. But I'm just saying, like, I didn't even mind dollar cost averaging back then. And if I take a look at it, dollar cost averaging back in January when it comes to ZBCN, like the feeling was, okay, it was slightly under 80 million in terms of market cap. Then it went to like, what, around 140 million, then it had a pullback. Then everyone told me, oh, ZBCN's done. It wasn't going to be anymore. Then suddenly we saw that market cap kind of rise right back in May, and it went to around 500 million. So the way you take a look at it is that if, let's say, there's even maybe a next leg up, who knows if it will ever even happen or if it even could. But I'm saying it's not something I'm going to be able to know because even back then I wasn't able to know the exact timing. Also, much could be said when it comes to Onyx or just any project that I'm holding. I mean, I can't control that in any way, shape, or form. That's the way to take a look at it. Also, in my point of view, I mean, I don't think ZBCN could even be like the number 3 player in this payments and global trade and finance space in terms of like the popularity, which I don't necessarily think it needs to, because for instance, we see the number 3 position as of right now, it is held by XDC, right? Number 2 is something like Stellar, or should I say XLM. But I don't think that ZBCN necessarily needs to be better than them. You know what I mean? I mean, the way you take a look at it is this. Does every single player who plays soccer, do they need to be as good as Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo? I don't think so. Like, I mean, it's not really possible, I think, in some cases to just always be like that, right? Sometimes there's a limit, you know what I mean? But it doesn't necessarily mean that there needs to be like that level of fame or like level of achievement. Sometimes just being like top 20, top 30, top 40 is a little bit okay, in my perspective. Like, for instance, does every single NFL quarterback need to be as good as Tom Brady? That would be awesome, but it's not necessary, right? Like, for instance, we've seen many other quarterbacks other than Tom Brady win the Super Bowl. You know, that's just the way you take a look at it. But even besides that point, when I take a look at ZBCN, I kind of view it a little bit no different in a sense where I don't really need it to be the best. And let's say it's just like top 4, top 5 within the payments and global trade and finance space. Like, I wouldn't even necessarily care too much if that was the case. Like, in terms of, it wouldn't bother me, right? That's the way I take a look at it. Because even at 10 cents, hypothetically at that point, considering current circulating supply, market cap would be around 9.5 billion. Like, that's not a groundbreaking achievement by any means, you know? It's not going to be breaking any records or something like that. But if I take a look at how 10 cents were around 30 times lower than that, like for instance, Bitcoin is around what? Like we take a look at right now, around 90 grand, right? It's still over 3 times lower than 300 grand. But the thing is, when it comes to that, it's over 3 times lower. It's not over 10 times lower. We're over 30 times lower than 10 cents. I mean, in order for even Bitcoin to go to 300 grand, it would have to reach a level it's never ever even reached before, and still it's over 3 times lower than that as of right now. That's just my perspective. Now, if let's say, hypothetically, I take a look at something like ZBCN, like, I mean, me just not believing anymore, like, sure, I could do that, but I just don't think I've seen an altcoin season, so how can I know if I can finish the marathon if I haven't ran the marathon? That's the way to take a look at it. But yeah, that's just my mindset real quick. I wanted to make an update video just to talk about my thoughts and kind of my perspective when it comes to something like Zebec, because, I mean, ever since the last 2 videos I made when it comes to ZBCN, there was like an update, another update. But as of right now, there's no update when it comes to the project, but there's an update when it comes to my perspective, because this is just kind of my perspective as of right now when it comes to Zebec. I just wanted to address that real quick. Again, the point I mentioned earlier in the video, just talking about how some people like to say, oh, why is it when I talk about ZBCN there was a pullback and all this type of stuff? Well, why didn't they talk about me talking about ZBCN back in May when it was doing its thing, so to speak, right? Now that it's having a pullback, suddenly every time I talk about it, like a certain movement happens, like I just don't know how I can even control that, but that is just my perspective. Again, it's just kind of like that example I used before, when my friend only wants to buy things in like even numbers, and if it's like in 3s, he doesn't want it. Like, for instance, again, 2 pairs of shoes, not 3 pairs, like 2 pairs of clothes, not 3 pairs again. It's just kind of like assuming something which actually may not even necessarily have to do with anything. Like, for instance, my friend buying 3 pairs of shirts, for instance. How does that have anything to do with his like day-to-day life or something like that? You know what I mean? But then still he thinks that if it's like 3 pairs, one might happen to one of the pairs because it's like not an even number when he's using it. It's like, how does that affect? I don't get it. Yeah, I mean, that's just my perspective though, but even besides that point, I just wanted to make an update video real quick, and I want to say thank you for watching. I hope y'all have a nice day. It's Mali the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.